Hello student, welcome all of you to massive open online course on Indian economy. Today we are going to discuss the module on the measures of income inequality. After completing this module, you are able to learn different concept of inequality, their merits and demerits, as well as their application to measure the income and wealth inequality. The model consists with 12 sections. Section 1 introduces the basic concept of income as well as wealth inequality, and section 2 to section 11 deal with different measures of inequality, and finally section 12 is the conclusion. From section 2 to section 11 we will discuss different measures of inequality such as Lorenz Curve, Gini Index, Atkinson Index, decile ratio, Palma ratio, general entropy measure, coefficient of variation, and many more. What do you mean by inequality? This is our starting point. Actually, inequality means the uneven distribution of income. If income is unevenly distributed among the population, among the different groups of population, then we call it as an income inequality. In case of income inequality, the different section of the people not able to earn same amount of income. There is the deviation of income from one group of people to another group of people. That is, there is a variation of the amount of income from one group of people to another group of people. This income inequality is also related with the distribution of the wealth among the population. And accordingly, there is also the concept of wealth inequality. And this income inequality is very much related with the wealth inequality. Different researchers as well as policymakers, they have measured and developed different concept of income inequalities, and these measures of income inequalities varies from one country to another country, from one discipline to another discipline. But the basic purpose of these measures is to quantify the extent of inequality, the pattern of inequality in respect of income or wealth. Now we will discuss different measures of inequality, their features, their limitation, and their applications. We start with the Lorenz curve. Lorenz curve is the very basic measures of the income inequality. These measures developed by American mathematician Max Lorenz in 1905. Actually, the Lorenz curve is based on the distribution of the income. If we consider equal distribution of income, that means if the 10% of people able to learn or able to earn 10% of income, as well as if the 40% of the people able to earn 40% of income, then this is called the equal distribution of income. And this Lorenz curve actually the special type of cumulative frequency curve where we have measured the cumulative percentage of income against the cumulative percentage of population. Therefore, it is called the special format of the cumulative frequency graph. And this graph also called the curve of concentration because it helps us the concentration of income and wealth in an economy. Figure 1 explores the Lorenz curve. To understand the Lorenz curve, let us consider this figure 1 in details. Actually, in this figure 1, the vertical axis measures the cumulative percentage of income, whereas the horizontal axis measures the cumulative percentage of the population. Both the cumulative percentage of income as well as cumulative percentage of population varies from 0 to 100%. And they are arranged in respect of the level of the income. 0 means lower income group and 100 means relatively higher income level. Now, if you consider the 45-degree line started from the origin, then this line is treated as the line of equality. Line of equality means here the 20% of total population able to earn 20% of the total income, and 40% of the population able to earn 40% of the income, and so on. That is, there is no inequality in the distribution of the income. But if we consider the curvature line, that is called the Lorenz curve, which is actually the departure from the line of equality, and on the in any point of the Lorenz curve, there is no evidence of the equal distribution of income. For example, if we consider this particular point, then here the 40% of the people earn only 20% of the total income. If you consider this particular point, this indicates that 60% of the total population only earn 20% of the total income. If you consider this particular point, then 80% of the total population able to earn only 40% of the total income. This is actually the extent of inequality, and this extent of inequality is understood by the Lorenz curve, and this Lorenz curve is therefore the departure from the line of equality. More and more departure from the line of equality indicates more and more concentration of wealth in few hands, and in this Lorenz curve, the area between line of equality and the line of concentration, that is line of the Lorenz curve, is called the area of the concentration. Larger the area of the concentration indicates larger inequality, and smaller the area of concentration indicates the smaller level of inequality. After the 7 years of the publication of the Lorenz curve or development of the Lorenz curve, the Italian statistician Corrado Gini in 1912 developed another important measure for the inequality, which is called the Gini measure of inequality, Gini coefficient of inequality, or it also called the Gini Index of inequality. And this Gini Index of inequality mathematically based on the concept of the Lorenz curve. If we look into the picture of the Lorenz curve, then we can specify the area in two categories. Suppose one area which is marked by A is the area in between line of equality and line of the Lorenz curve, and this area which is marked by A is called the area of the concentration, and the area below the Lorenz curve is denoted by B. B is the area below the Lorenz curve. Therefore, if you consider total area A and B, that is A plus B is the total area below the line of equality. And actually the primary measure of the Gini index is based on the ratio of A to total area of A plus B, that is G equal to A by A plus B. That is, the Gini index is the ratio of the area in between line of concentration and line of equality to total area below the line of equality. Gini index also mathematically measured by using some formula. If you consider y1, y2, yn are the level of income for nth individual, and their mean income of this nth individual is say mu is the mean income of this total population, then the Gini coefficient also present by using this particular formula, where G equal to double summation mod of yi minus yj whole divided by 2n square into mu. Here mu is the mean income of the population and n is the number of population, and double summation, one summation varies from 1 to n and another summation varies from j1 to n, and actually it is the sum of the deviation of income between two individuals yi and yj. This is the logic of the development of the Gini index. Some of the academicians, they can prefer to express the Gini coefficient by using different formula, where G equal to double summation yi minus yj divided by 2n into n minus 1 into mu. These are the alternative measures of the Gini index. That is, we can measure the Gini index by using the ratio in respect of the area of the Lorenz curve, as well as we are able to measure the Gini index by using these two alternative formula. And after the calculation of the Gini index, we will notice that this value of the Gini coefficient or Gini index varies from 0 to 1. 0 means the lower value, lowest value, and 1 is the maximum value. In percentage term, it varies from 0 to 100%. 0 means there is no inequality. Total income is equally distributed among the population. Or 1 means the maximum inequality. And there are some important properties of the Gini index, and these properties are related with their nature of the measurement. It is the quantitative measure, it is the index measure, and it is the unit-free measure. That is, Gini index is an unit-free measurement. But there are also some limitation of the Gini index or Gini coefficient which measure the inequality. The most important limitation is that we cannot decompose this Gini index into different component of the population. That is, we are able to calculate aggregate Gini index by using this formula, but we are not able to decompose it into different segment of the population. Side by side, the Gini index is also not able to consider different weights for different segments of the population. Now we come to the another important measures of inequality, which is called Atkinson inequality measure. Actually, it is the most popular welfare-based measure of inequality. This Atkinson measures of inequality represents the percentage of total income that a given society would have to give up for the equal distribution of income among its citizens. That is, what amount of income will be needed for the equal distribution in the economy. This is the exact measurement of the Atkinson inequality measure. And this Atkinson inequality measure is also related with some important features. What are the important features of the Atkinson index? Now, if we consider the Atkinson index, then we are able to decompose this Atkinson index into the within group and between group inequality. That is, we are able to decompose the aggregate Atkinson index into the within group inequality as well as the between group inequality. And the Gini index is unable to measure different weights for a different section of the population, but the Atkinson index able to consider this sensitivity parameter which attached different weights for the different income distribution, and it introduces the social judgments in the measure of inequality, and finally it incorporates the sensitivity parameter which can range from 0 to infinity. That is, by using the sensitivity parameter, Atkinson index of inequality able to measure the inequality where different weight will be assigned for different segments of the population. Decile ratio. It is also a very simple measure of the inequality. By using the ratio of the two decile, we are able to understand the extent of inequality in a country. Actually, deciles means these are the statistical measure that divides the total distribution into 10 equal parts, and there are 9 deciles which are denoted by say D1, D2, D3 up to D9. This 9 decile, D1 to D9, help us to define different group of the population in respect of their income, and the ratio of the ratio of the xth decile of the higher income group to the xth decile of the lower income group is actually the decile ratio, and this ratio is very useful to measure the income inequality, and this ratio can also easily interpretable. And another important aspect is that by using this ratio, we are able to understand the extent of inequality, that is what times a particular income group earns in respect of the lower income group. And generally there are some ratios to measure this decile ratio, say the ratio of D9 to D1. D9 means it is actually the income of the top 10% people, and D1 means the average income of the bottom 10% people. Therefore, D9 to D1, that is the ratio of the D9 to D1, indicates the ratio of the income of the top 10% people to the ratio of the income of the lower 10% people. If you consider another ratio of the decile, say D5 by D1, it is actually the ratio of the fifth decile to the first decile. Fifth decile actually measures the median income, the mean income or the median income of the population. Therefore, D5 to D1 is the ratio of the median income in respect of the poorest 10% income. But there is some limitation of the measurement of this formula, that is the decile ratio. The basic limitation is that this measurement also affected by a very large value, that is very small value or very large value affected the measurement of the deciles ratio. And the particular deciles ratio is also called the Palma ratio, which is developed by Chilean economist Gabriel Palma. It is actually the ratio of the income of the richest 10% people to the poorest or bottom 40% people. That is, it is actually the ratio of the D9 by D4, ninth decile by the fourth decile, D9 by D4. This is the particular ratio of the decile classes, and this particular ratio is developed by the Palma ratio to understand the extent of inequality in the economy. And this Palma ratio addresses the Gini indexes over the sensitivity to changes in the middle of the distribution and insensitivity to changes at the top and bottom, and therefore more accurately reflects the economic impacts of income inequality on the society as a whole. Palma has suggested that the distributional politics affected mainly to the suggested between or the struggle between the rich and the poor, and who the middle class left behind, they are not reflected in the distributional politics. The basic limitation of the Palma ratio is that it is also vulnerable by the extremely large values, that is extremely small and extremely large values also affected this Palma ratio. Another statistical measure of the inequality is the coefficient of variation. This coefficient of variation mainly based on the two important measures of the statistics. One is the standard deviation and another is the mean. Standard deviation measures the dispersion of income in a country, whereas mean is the mean income or average income of the country. And coefficient of variation is simply the ratio of the standard deviation to mean. And the coefficient of variation is measured, which is equal to standard deviation by mean into 100 if we are interested to express the coefficient of variation in percentage term. As standard deviation measures the degree of dispersion, that is the degree of variation of income, therefore higher standard deviation indicates higher variation, higher dispersion of income. Therefore, the higher value of coefficient of variation also indicates higher level of inequality, and the lower value of coefficient of variation, which is corresponds with lower value of standard deviation, indicates the lower degree of inequality. And this is also very simple measure of the inequality, but this measure of inequality not widely used, because there are some limitation to measure the coefficient of variation as a measure of inequality. The basic limitation is that this measurement is also depends on two particular statistical measures, standard deviation and mean, which are also affected by the extreme values, that is extremely large and extremely small values also affected the measure of standard deviation and coefficient of variation as well as the mean value. This is the basic limitation of the coefficient of variation. Another limitation is that the value of the coefficient of variation is not upper bound. In case of Gini index, the lower bound is 0 and upper bound is 100. That is, in case of Gini index, maximum value is equal to 1, which indicates maximum inequality. But in case of coefficient of variation, there is no upper bound. Its value depends on the value of standard deviation and the mean. Therefore, it has no upper bound, no upper value. Therefore, we are not able to exactly interpret the estimated value of the coefficient of variation. Another important measure of the inequality is the general entropy index. The general entropy index is also in the group of Atkinson Index, and it is the more correctly labeled a family of income inequality measures. It also incorporates a sensitivity parameter that varies in the weight given in inequalities in different parts of the income spectrum, and the value of the entropy index also varies from 0 to infinity. 0 means equal distribution, and relatively larger value indicates higher level of inequality. And we are also able to decompose the general entropy measure, and we are also able to decompose this general entropy measure into the within group and between group distribution. Another measure of inequality is the Theil index. It is developed by the Dutch econometrician Henry Theil. Actually, to measure the Henry Theil, who developed the Theil index by his name, Henry considers the different agents of the income, that is, different segments of the income group within the population, and particular segment of the income group is denoted by xi, and he considered there are n number of segments. And on the basis of this specification or this classification of the income group, Theil considers two index to measure the inequality. One is called Theil T index and another is called Theil L index. Theil T index is actually the 1 by n summation I equal to 1 to n xi by mu log of xi by mu. Here mu is the mean income of this x number of agents, and xi is the particular income of the ith agent, and n is the number of agents, that is number of segments within the population. Along with this Theil T index, Theil also measures Theil L index, which is defined as 1 by n summation I equal to 1 to n log of mu by xi. Here xi by mu is absent. It is only summation of log of mu by xi, and where mu is the mean income, and mean income means 1 by n summation I equal to 1 to n xi. On the basis of this formula, Theil able to measure the Theil index, which is very important measure of the inequality. Another measure of inequality is the proportion of total income earned. This is a very simple measure, and this is actually not the measure, it is actually the percentage share of income earned by a specific group of people. Say if you consider, say, bottom 40% of people, what amounts of income, total income they are able to earn. Suppose say bottom 40% people able to earn 20% of the total income. In this way, proportion of the total income earned measurement able to understand the extent of inequality in a country. But this measurement is not able to incorporate different features of the inequality, and the basic limitation of this measurement is that it only indicates the percentage of income of a particular segment of the people, but it ignores the distribution of income of this segment of the people as well as distribution of the income other segment of the people. Another important measure of the inequality is the Robin Hood Index. The Robin Hood Index measurement is actually based on the Lorenz Curve. The vertical distance between Lorenz Curve and the line of equality is the measurement of the Robin Hood Index. It is called the Robin Hood Index because it can be interpreted as a proportion of income that has to be transferred from those above the mean to those below the mean in order to achieve an equal distribution. That is, at what amount of income will be needed to redistribute in the economy from rich to poor to maintain the equal distribution. This is actual purpose of the measurement of the Robin Hood Index. And it has also some limitation. The basic limitation is that unlike the Atkinson or general entropy index, Robin Hood Index not able to incorporate the sensitivity parameter. That is, so far we have discussed 10 important measures of inequality, and these measurements of inequality are based on the different concepts, and different researchers as well as policymakers used these alternative measures of inequality to quantify the extent of inequality in the economy. And their uses also varies from one country to another country, from one researcher to another researcher, but the basic purpose is that they help us to quantify the extent of inequality in the country. And also the purpose, at what purpose we are able to measure the inequality. Accordingly, we can select the appropriate measure of the inequality. But the selection of the particular measurement of the inequality is also related with the availability of the data. Availability of the data is also important features for the selection of the appropriate measures of the inequality. In our country, in India, we are not able to measure all these 10 measures of inequality because of the unavailability of data. We are able to measure some measures of inequality. In the next module, we will explore the empirical evidence of the inequality in our country, in India, on the basis of the some of the measures of inequality. Thank you, students.